Over the last couple days, I've been watching videos made by parents who claim that their children were born in the wrong body. Oftentimes, these parents claim that their child was trying to tell them that they were born in the wrong body as early as 2 years old. There are a couple of themes that I keep seeing running through these videos. First of all, I don't have any doubt that these parents are loving and caring people. I think that they're trying to do what's best for their child. But I also think that they've bought into this weird trans ideology that claims that a person can be born into the wrong body. And that right there is the crux of the problem. Another problem that I see, and this doesn't happen in every single case, but I'm seeing it in a lot of cases, where a father will say that their daughter was the boy they always wanted, and that their daughter played with them out in the yard and watched football with them. And so the father knew that even though his daughter was born female, that daughter really was a boy. Or a mother who says, I always knew that my son was a daughter. This was the daughter that I was meant to have because my son liked to cook and dress up and play with girls' toys. So what concerns me most is that these parents who claim that their children are transgender are basing it solely on these presentations and behaviors that are stereotypically associated with one gender or the other. So a boy who likes to play dress up, that's the justification that is used to say, oh, I could tell they were trying to tell me they were born in the wrong body. Because the child likes to play dress up and is acting like a stereotypical girl. Or I always knew my daughter was actually a boy because she liked to play football and had a toolkit when she was a little kid. What this indicates to me is that these are parents who have conforming ideas about gender stereotypes that are very rigid. So these are parents who are claiming to be very open-minded, but in fact they're very, very closed-minded because they're assuming that the kinds of toys that a child likes to play with, the kind of behaviors that a child has, the kind of clothes that a child wants to wear, define their gender. And it's not surprising in these cases that a child would pick up on that and think that they were born in the wrong body if that's the message they're getting from their parents. And I've also heard of cases, and I've talked about this in other videos, where this is kind of documented, that parents have been homophobic and they have a very masculine daughter who they're concerned is going to be a lesbian, or a very feminine boy who they're concerned is going to be gay. And so they just transition that child. And that way, they have a heterosexual presenting child when that child grows up. I'm very concerned about the fact that these parents are telling other parents that if they don't affirm a child's gender dysphoria, that child might kill themselves. And what emotional blackmail that is. A parent who has a child that has gender dysphoria is told, if that child kills themselves, it's your fault because you didn't affirm them. That's incredible blackmail. That is unconscionable to tell a parent that. First of all, it's not necessary. There's really no evidence to back it up. There is evidence to suggest that children whose parents reject them are at a higher risk for mental health issues. And that seems pretty obvious. If a parent is abusive, rejecting, neglectful, that child probably is going to have some issues. Maybe not. I mean, a lot of us grew up with parents like that. Maybe have issues, maybe don't. But the point is that there's a big difference between a parent loving a child and a parent affirming a child. One of the things parents are supposed to do is do not affirm children, because children are children. They don't have the wisdom and experience of adults. Parents' job is to not affirm children's magical thinking, their misbehavior, their behavior that isn't conforming to social norms. We don't have parents who are suggesting that we should affirm the behavior of a child who's a bully. And yet, maybe that child identifies as a bully. So what's the difference between identifying a child who's a bully and affirming a child who is uncomfortable in their body? They're both behaviors that are going to cause dysfunction in the future. So when I hear these stories, they're often very heartfelt stories by well-meaning parents. And one of the problems is these parents are never, ever going to change their mind. Because if they do, then they're going to have to accept that perhaps affirming their child was the wrong decision. Perhaps encouraging their child to transition and then medically transition was not the best choice. And parents are going to have a really hard time with that. If suddenly they hear from somebody like me that says, wait a minute, gender dysphoria is a mental health issue that can be treated, suddenly that parent has to reassess everything that they did. And it's going to be difficult for them if their child, especially if their child medically transitioned, especially if their child later detransitions. But when I hear a parent say, my child was born in the wrong body, I think, well, that's part of the problem, that this child has a parent who is not grounded in reality. So there are a lot of well-meaning parents out there that believe that we should affirm children, that believe that our job as a parent is to make a child's life better, that our job as a parent is to be sensitive and kind and to protect our children. And we're ending up with a whole bunch of very vulnerable, fragile children as a result of this attitude. So what I would suggest is if there is a child who has gender dysphoria, whether you're a teacher or a parent or a friend, you don't have to affirm a child's gender dysphoria in order to be supportive. You can be very supportive of a child without affirming their delusion. And the other thing is that just because a child is gender non-conforming does not mean they're transgender. It doesn't even mean they have gender dysphoria. It's unfortunate now that we have kind of gone full circle and we're embracing the idea that if a child presents as the opposite stereotypical gender and does things that are stereotypical of the other gender, then they are the other gender. These are stereotypes. These are stereotypes. These are stereotypes. I don't know how to not say that enough. That if you have a child who is gender dysphoric, allowing them to adopt the stereotypical behavior of the opposite gender is not going to resolve their dysphoric feelings. If you have a child who is gender non-conforming, that does not mean that they're transgender. If you have a child who believes that they were born in the wrong body, affirming that delusion isn't going to help them. It's going to further confuse them. Children they rely on adults to create reality for them. And if we start creating a reality that is untrue, if we start telling little kids that they could be born in the wrong body, that is a terrible, terrible message. Can you imagine little kids and their very lack of experience, and we're talking about something sort of metaphysical, and we tell them that somebody can be born in the wrong body? That could be really scary. Even if you have no issues with gender, being told you could be born in the wrong body, if you're a child who is prone to anxiety, that would cause anxiety. I can just imagine kids being like, well, what if I'm born in the wrong body? So-and-so was born in the wrong body. I might be born in the wrong body. How do we know if we're born in the right body? Well, the fact is we're all born in the right body. Some of us have more comfort within the body that we're born in, and some of us have less comfort. As adults, some adults choose to transition because that helps them to be more comfortable. But as children, we need to really help children to feel comfortable in the body that they're in. So when I see these parent videos and I see a proud father say, yes, my daughter was the son I always wanted, well, I wonder why that child has gender dysphoria. If that child felt the whole time she was growing up that she was the son that you always wanted, even though she was a girl, that's likely to cause dysphoric feelings. And children are desperate for approval from their parents. So if she knew that she was getting approval from her father because she was acting as the father's surrogate son, it's not surprising that at some point she wanted to transition. And same with the little boys who want to dress up and be beautiful. What this is actually doing is pushing people into more traditional gender stereotypes. Instead of expanding our opportunities and allowing children to just be children, we are pigeonholing them. So the very parents who are trying to pretend like they are very progressive and talking about they bees because they don't want to gender their baby are actually the ones who are most like gender conforming, gender stereotypical, because they believe that the name that you give the child and the clothes that you dress the child in and the toys that you allow a child to play with define their gender. And that's just not the case. What defines our gender is the body we're born in. We're male or we're female. Some of us are females that tend to be a little bit more masculine. Some of us are males that tend to be a little bit more feminine. Some of us are males that tend to be very feminine, and vice versa. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're born in the wrong body. So I really hope that we can break this idea that children can be born in the wrong body. And I think that the reason that this has caught on is because if we say, oh my gosh, we had no choice, we had to transition them because they were born in the wrong body, or it's not the child's choice to be transgender because they were born in the wrong body, then it sort of takes parents off the hook and children off the hook. And it sort of requires society to conform to the child rather than the other way around, which is historically how it's always been. So in a way, I can see why people are doing that. They want to do this to promote acceptance of transgender people. However, in the long run, it's going to hurt children. And it's going to hurt a lot of children. And it's going to hurt society if we continue to promulgate the myth that people can be born in the wrong body. If you believe you are in the wrong body, it's time to get some help accepting your body. It's time to find peace within your body. There are lots of different techniques and therapies that can be useful. Transitioning is the last treatment option for someone with gender dysphoria, and it should not be utilized until a child is an adult, until they've progressed through natural puberty, because 90 to 95% of children who experience gender dysphoria will have that dysphoria resolved if allowed to naturally progress through puberty. So 90 to 95% of those children who believed that they were born in the wrong body, or who looked like maybe they were gender non-conforming, or perhaps thought that they were a boy instead of a girl, 95% of those will outgrow it. So what we're doing now is we are treating 100% of children with gender dysphoria in the way that the very small 5% should be treated as adults. And that's really not appropriate. And there's no rationale for trying to legislate that teachers and parents and therapists have to affirm a gender dysphoric child, because that's requiring people to affirm a lie.